been a long few months for the governor. Do you think the legislature has the stomach to consider impeaching Governor Bentley?
I don't know whether it's the question whether they have the stomach or not. It's whether they have the right to. You know, we have never gone down this path before. There's no way, there's no constitution. It's very, very vague about how you go about impeaching a public official. So the House Judiciary Committee is going down a blind road really with this thing. And a good many of those guys on the House Judiciary Committee are non-lawyers. Now, Mike Jones from Andalusia, the chairman, is a lawyer. But, and you have 3 of them on there, Jack, who have actually signed the resolution calling for the impeachment hearings, which makes them somewhat prejudiced. It's sort of vague as to whether this is a grand jury, whether it's like a trial. They just almost grabbing for straws in how to go about this. I don't think that most people in the state think that Bentley has reached a threshold of being impeached. What he has done is not illegal so far. Now, I would say, if I were a member of the legislature, and I think most people would think this way, let's see how the investigative process works out. There are federal agencies investigating the entire scenario, and the legislature doesn't need to get involved because they want to cast stones at what he's done with his personal life.
Does Spencer Collier's wrongful termination suit play to Bentley's disadvantage?
It is the total pivotal reason that the hearings are being held is his suit and his allegations, which are really better served in a court of civil appeals than a court of criminal impeachment hearings. They're using some of the rules and some of the ramifications used in impeaching the Illinois governor. They're taking those pages from the Illinois Code, which actually had some laws about how to impeach public officials. Alabama has no laws about that. So they're just reaching for straws and how to go about this whole thing. But I would say that let's see how the investigative process proceeds, because there are indeed documented proof that there are investigations going on by the federal government regarding that scenario with Governor Bentley and Ms. Mason. So I would, think the House is sort of getting a cart ahead of the horse.
You were in the Mike Hubbard trial from day one. Did it turn out like you thought it would before it began, and after hearing some of the testimony, did the end result happen like you thought?
Almost precisely. I want to say that I followed that trial in entirety. I've never seen a better job done by a circuit judge, Jacob Walker III, and I've never seen a more diligent, attentive, and rapt jury. Those jurors took that thing seriously. They heard the facts, and I got to say this. If I were a juror sitting in that box with those people, those counts would be exactly the ones I would have come back on. Sometimes the belief is that prosecutors throw in extra allegations and indictments in order to give the jury the feeling that let's just do these. And that's kind of what I think happened. It came up in closing arguments that the defense team was saying they just thrown these things in. For example, the Bob Riley testimony, which lasted several days, and his daughter Minda's testimony, really did help Hubbard's case in those regards, because it clearly came out to those jurors and anybody else who was watching that Bob Riley and Mike Hubbard are truly 20-year best friends. And it could be perceived, and I think rightfully so, that Hubbard was just asking Riley as a father figure, should I do this or should I do that? He never got anything from Riley. He never really got anything of value. Unlike the other contracts, we got $5,000 from this company to put a pharmaceutical language in the budget for the Medicaid budget, and it was that was some fire there.
Does Hubbard's conviction or the trial in general open up a door of future ethics charges for other legislators, some that may have testified in this one?
Well, clearly, this is the first case that has come out under the new ethics law, which ironically Mike Hubbard fostered and promoted, and heralded as being the Tiffany linchpin initial thing that Republicans are going to do, going to clean up Montgomery. So they passed this very stringent ethics law. What came out to me, and observing the jury instruction from the judge and the closing argument from the defense team, this is a very, very strict ethics law. It clearly says that you not only cannot solicit any outside income, you can't receive it. If you receive outside income, and that's what the jury based their verdict on. Every time there was money received by Hubbard to his benefit financially, they convicted him of it. And that's what the law says now, which puts a very, very tough shadow on someone who's actually a citizen legislator. If someone's making a living in any profession or any business, you know, someone could say that this person's hiring them to fix their car if they've got a car repair business because they're a member of the legislature. So it's a tough law. What that came out was a tough law.
Are we now in the era of the professional politician? Are the days, for the most part, of a good man that runs a business that wants to serve the public going to Montgomery, is that over because they fear the retribution that comes from trying to do a good job, the power trip that we've seen so many politicians suffer from?
My belief is yes. I think you have cast a shadow over someone who owns a corner dry cleaning business, who's 60 years old, who's done a good job building their business, has a chain of dry cleaning stores, and they very popular in their community, and someone comes to him and wants to run for legislature, and he said, well, what about the ethics law? Well, if Sam Jones, who owns a business, comes in and does business with his dry cleaning store, he could be convicted of giving this guy preferential treatment. And I think it does. What it does, it makes it so that someone who's retired, or the fact is a lot of states, much larger states than ours, Texas, California, New York, have gone to full-time legislative ranks where you pay them a good salary or decent salary, and that's their full-time job, just like congressmen. They can't do anything but that. And then where that's happened, you have really cleaned up the ethics. You don't have any ethics convictions because it's clear. You're a congressman or you're a state senator, one or the other. You can't practice law.
Does that model, in a way, contradict the foundation that the country was built on?
It does, but the country's changed. You know, the legislature, when it first was started, was every 4 years. Then it was every 2 years they met. Now they meet 6 months out of the year, almost like Congress does. But you know, Congress was that way at first. Congress was designed so someone had a farm in Kentucky and they took 2 months out of the year to go to Washington and represent that rural area of Kentucky in the United States Congress. But times have changed. Legislatures changed.
We've talked probably 24 times on the phone for stories since, really since the Bentley story came out. You told me then that you get calls from national media people going, what's going on down there? Do you still get calls like that from people wondering what's going on in Alabama? And do you think we have plateaued in a way with drama politically in this state?
I think the drama hit about 3 weeks ago when coincidentally the three people who headed the three branches of government in the state, the governor was involved with a political saga or scandal, and then Mike Hubbard, the Speaker of the House, had 23 felony counts on ethics law violation, which he's now being convicted of. And then Roy Moore was removed on the bench by the Judicial Inquiry Commission. So yes, it made us look like a laughing stock. We were the poster boy for bad politics throughout the country, but it subsided somewhat. I mean, the shoe's falling on Hubbard. The looming thing now is what happens with Bentley. There's things. This new House Judiciary Committee having investigation on impeachment, the federal authorities investigating thoroughly. We might have seen the last of the Bentley saga.
What do you think will happen with the Bentley Spencer Collier episode?
I think it'll be in the news for a while. It takes a civil case a year or two to unravel and get to court. So that'll be going on. There'll be things said about that. The thing I think that the Bentley folks have got to be concerned about is the federal investigation. Going back to what I was saying a while ago, you could almost indict a potato. So if somebody has done anything wrong, I mean, it's like, you know, indictments are easy to get. I mean, there could be some time where somebody might have flown a plane inadvertently or something like that. If you want to indict somebody, you can indict them. And I don't know where that's going to go.
Do you think we'll see a special session this summer?
I think that we will not if we do, I don't think the legislature wants to come into special session. I think they made it clear to the governor when they left, especially the Senate. The Senate made it clear we're not going to raise taxes. We have passed the budget that we're going to live with for the beginning of the fiscal year in October 16. I'm sorry if Medicaid got cut, but we're not going to raise taxes to resolve it. Now, is that the right thing to do? Probably not. But they are of the opinion that's what they're going to do. Now, the House has even become less likely to want to go into session because they are rudderless. They really have no leader. And so, you know, they want to have time to resolve who's going to be their speaker. And I think they would prefer to wait to the beginning of next year to see how that plays out.
Who are the big names that could have that job?
Well, for a long time, Victor Gaston told me and anybody else, and he and I are good friends. We went to the House together in 1982. He's a good man, very meticulous person, but he made it clear he did not want to be Speaker of the House. That's changed this week. He has had a lot of encouragement to take over because his transition just to be Speaker for the remaining 2 years of the quadrennium would give a healing, less political side to the House. They've had so much turmoil with this Hubbard thing that someone like Victor Gaston would go in as a grandfather figure and just kind of, you know, sit there. They know he doesn't want to be Speaker the next time, and you know, just resolve what issues you have to resolve. That's the better thing than have a big fight within the House, because there are 5 or 6 people right now jockeying to run for Speaker. So you make it a real quagmire, a real fight in there.
Do you think he's the most likely successor to Hubbard right now?
If I had to bet, I'd bet on him, them saying that, what I just said, he's a perfect choice, that let's just all acquiesce around Victor and let him, you know, preside over the next 2 years of the quadrennium, and let's start fresh at that point.
What is the feeling and the general vibe in the state capitol right now after all this that's gone on and is going on?
Well, you know, it's been such a turmoil. I think the Hubbard thing has been going on so long that this sort of relief is finally resolved one way or the other, because it left such a question mark over the House. You know, what's going to happen to Hubbard? Is he going to be convicted or not convicted? Who's going to be Speaker after him? You know, there's a resolution finally that there will be a new Speaker of the House, and Hubbard will not be controlled. Hubbard had garnered an inordinate amount of control. It was almost like, especially the first 4 years, he was like a dictator. He just treated the House as though it was like a puppet. I mean, they were pawns in the system. He dictated everything. And there's an old saying in politics that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's kind of what happened in the Hubbard case. He just got so powerful, and he thought he sort of was above the law. If you read the jury instructions and watched the whole scenario, it's almost as though this is pretty plain. You know, you can't take money from lobbying groups as a member of the legislature to pass legislation. That's the job of a lobbyist. You know, you can't be both at the same time. And I think he thought he could get away with it. So that, you know, you get that powerful, you think nobody's going to bother you, and that's kind of what happened.
Steve, thank you.
Thank you, buddy. Call me anytime now, yeah.
You know I will, and
Yeah.
I do.